What is up, everybody? As my good friend Macho Dan likes to say, we are live. I am here tonight with my new friend, John Hervey.
Yes,
And,
indeed.
and John is a writer extraordinaire for a comic which you see on the screen there called Black Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And we're going to talk about that. But before we do talk about that, we're actually going to get into a little bit of a subject that he and I have been talking about offline that I think
Yes,
is pretty interesting and probably something that some of our creator friends in the community probably need to listen to and maybe take some notes about also.
absolutely.
Um, so, John, uh, we were talking about the need for that sort of sweet spot for all ages comics to that sort of PG-13 level
Yes,
action story, and how a lot of stuff in the indie scene is above that level, and so it really creates a problem for us as dads because we can't really share a lot of that comic book magic with our kids who are coming of age, maybe middle school, maybe a little younger,
hmm
and they want to be able to check out what dad's enjoying and what about these stories and the cool art and all that stuff. Uh,
absolutely.
why don't you give me just kind of an overview of what you think about that, and we'll just kind of wrap into
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think about myself growing up, and the world was very different when I first started reading comics. You get them on, the spinner racks. I get them going to the 7-Eleven or local drugstore with my mom. And the thing that I realized about comics as I got older is it's kind of like those old Looney Tune cartoons. I mean, it's like you glean what you could glean at the age that you're at, and then when you got older you realize, oh, there were more adult themes in the book, but they
Yeah.
weren't so like overbearing or so explicit that it wasn't available to young folks.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
I
like
think the
there was
challenge.
there
No,
was
go
kind
ahead.
of, as the adult can enjoy it because they kind of know the world, they know the reality of life. College level kids were buying Marvel stuff in the 70s and 80s because they understood like life and the older stuff.
Hmm.
But that wasn't like in your face to the point where you couldn't ignore it if you were just a kid wanting to read through the whole thing and just have a cool story.
That's right. That's right. And I think what it does is when you don't do that, you don't have a launching point or a jumping on point for younger readers. And that's one of the things that I think I enjoyed about reading my books even as I got older is as I matured, I realized, man, these books aren't, I mean, the fight scenes are cool and seeing Spider-Man do it, but Spider-Man's having like relationship issues.
Yeah,
Spider-Man's,
yeah,
then you start realizing there's a lot more to the book, but they weren't written in a way that was exclusive or that were like super explicit, so that you're like, oh, and to me, even my wife challenged me with that. She was
yeah,
just like, the things that you love about books. I mean, are you making books that give the same levels of accessibility?
yeah,
And I think that's where it really becomes an art in making a book.
yeah,
And that's why I refer to those old Looney Tune type kind of cartoons. It's like, you could enjoy it as a kid just because of like just the physical humor of it. But then it's like you watch it when you're older, and you're like, oh man, that was there's more to that joke than I remember as a kid.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think when you've done that, you've kind of crossed the divide and you've made
Right.
something that is um, accessible
Yeah.
to folks of different ages and interesting to folks of different ages.
Yeah. Welcome to the nefarious 6 a.m. comics, one of the worst human beings on the planet, but he's here. So welcome anyway. Also, welcome to Yang Yan Zhao.
Yang, what is going
What's
on,
up?
buddy?
I hope everybody's having a good night. Thank you for joining us. I think the one thing I would add to that, which you said very well, and I agree with 100% with what you said. But I think one thing I would add is that writers, when writers had the comics code in mainstream comics,
Hmm.
it gave them rails that they had to sort of stay within. It gave them boundaries and guidelines. And
Yes.
I actually believe that that's good for creative people because it gives creative people sort of the box with which they can play in. And I
Yeah.
know people say think outside the box, and that's kind of a popular thing for people. They think if you tell a creative person to color outside the lines, that that gives a creative person lots of joy, and it might for some, but for a lot of the people, especially the people that I work with in the creative field, they actually need guidelines. They actually need the
Absolutely.
box because then they can really express true creativity within the boundaries of that. And
Yeah.
that's what the writers and artists back in those comics code days were doing.
Hmm.
And I think there's something to that. And for the comics that I create and for the comics that I enjoy and want to back and buy,
Yeah.
they kind of fit that comics code era mold because they can show violence, they can show adventure, they can have high
Hmm.
stakes, they can have big themes, but it's
Yeah.
within the rails and boundaries of something that a 13-year-old and under can actually enjoy.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, I mean, on so many different levels, it's important. I mean, we talk about, young folks. Young folks are, it's not that they don't read. I mean, they're picking up manga.
Mhm,
They're picking up, different, different forms of, I'll throw out the term literature.
mhm,
And it's like, um, comics, we need to make sure that we're giving people jumping on points. And that's one
mhm.
of the things that I loved about books back in the day. I think I started off when I really said, what, I'm a comic book collector. I think it was around Avengers, like, I don't know, 281, 282. But the thing is, it didn't matter that there were 280 issues prior to that. They gave you a way to jump on board. You learned about the characters kind of as you went through the adventure, and then they kind of gave you a button at the end,
Yeah,
and so it wasn't prohibitive. Like, man, if I don't know all of this lore, if I don't know 280 issues worth of lore, I can't enjoy this. And it's like
right.
we have to be able to. And I'm looking at all these awesome comics that I know in your screen in the back, and like, I told you I was rereading some of the Byrne Fantastic Four, and
Yeah,
one of the things that they were always cognizant of doing is, if they're referencing something in the past, they would also give you what you needed.
mhm,
So they tell you, okay, we give you an asterisk, let you know this was from Fantastic Four 187. But then they would also, right there in the context, give you everything that you needed. So, like, if you had that issue, you feel awesome. You're like, oh yeah, I read that. I got that issue. But if you didn't, you're
yeah,
like, I can proceed with the story.
yeah,
And one of the things that comics, at least mainstream comics, did was they made it inaccessible to even jump into stories.
mhm,
And I get it. It was a sales tactic, interweave things, and you got to start from back here. But then people are just like, well, forget it. I just wanted to buy this one issue, but
yeah,
I'm locked out. I've got to go and buy 5 issues back this way, and I
yeah.
got to buy, laterally, and it's too much.
Yeah, I think it was Michael Bancroft recently that was talking about. I heard him talking about X-Men subscribers, recent X-Men subscribers, and the
Mhm.
X-Men franchise is so broad and dense that there is no jumping on point. And as a matter of fact, most people are jumping off because you have to
Yeah,
have literally 12 different books going to understand what's happening in your favorite comic. And that's, in my mind, that's just bad marketing. That's no way to continue to have a subscriber base.
absolutely. And the thing that we forget about comics is there those of us that love comics, we all started as casual readers. I mean, right now, either you are just a fanboy collector or you're out of it. But comics were accessible. They were, granted, it was a different price point back in the day, but it's like you weren't even really of the mindset. I remember when I decided I was going to be collecting books.
Hmm.
Like I already told you, like all my old books, they are well read. I've got some books that if they were in good shape, they'd be worth something, but nah, they're not. I can't fetch too much for any of my books. But making things in a way that's accessible to folks, that it doesn't mean you have to dumb it down,
Mhm.
but it just means how do you present that information? How do you present that
Mhm.
material?
Yeah.
It's like even something that's horrific. It's like, do you have to show all the gore?
Right.
Do you have to show all the sex? Do you
Right.
have to explicitly show all these things?
Hmm.
Sometimes the most impactful stories are the ones where something happened, but you don't see it.
Yes. The notorious and disgusting 6 a.m. comics has to say, I can't keep track of all the gay romances in Marvel anymore. Very frustrating that I don't know who Iceman is with these days. Very frustrating indeed. I know that he loves to keep up with those Iceman comics. So we'll keep
There's a
praying for you.
market for there's a market for everybody. There's a market for everybody.
I was thinking while you're mentioning those things that it's just bad. It's just bad. It's just bad publishing to not go after the younger sector, to sort of like block them out, right?
Absolutely.
And let me pause for a second, because I have friends that make some really awesome comics that are for mature readers, and that's cool. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying that there's a big old fat road, a big lane right down the middle of the road, highway, that is a really good way to go that people aren't really, it doesn't seem like they're interested in taking.
Yeah.
And it's a need. And if someone's out there and you're listening to this and you have a comic that fits that PG-13 and under crowd, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you about it and help you promote it, because that's what the market really needs right now. If we want to see the market in indie comics grow to a point where it's really going to take over and sort of compete with some of the manga stuff and all that kind of thing.
And the interesting thing is, like, you look at so many creators, and a lot of, a number of creators, they have kids, but their shows are structured in a way where they wouldn't let their kids watch their shows. And their books are structured in a way where they wouldn't let their kids read their books. So it's like, we can't complain about young folks not being introduced if we can't even introduce our own young people to the stuff we're making.
That's a good point. That's a hard point to swallow, but a good point indeed.
Well, I told you, my wife, she got on me when I first started making books. She's just like, so what's, at what point will you be able to share your content with your kids?
Yeah.
I was just like, wow. Yeah, I didn't really think about it. I didn't think that out too well, did I?
Yeah. I get the same challenge from family members. And what's funny though is with my book Hero, like in the first issue, we definitely sort of had that PG-13 ceiling. There's some violence in it. It's actually some rough violence, but we were trying to play against that notion of that, I would say 90s style, 80s to 90s style action movie with 90s comics infused in it. Like there's no cursing, there's no sexual innuendo type stuff. It does have some violence, but we tried to not make it so like in your face, right? But I definitely danced on the line there. But I'm hoping that we'll probably continue with Hero in that regard, because that was the flavor we were hitting at the time. But in the future, for me, I definitely see working on a book. I've got a couple in my sketchbook that I want to produce that are in that sort of all ages category, because I really want my kids to see my books and they see Hero, they like Hero, especially my older kids like Hero.
Nice.
But I want them to have something that's a little bit more like from Dad,
right.
This is a great story from Dad that he loves, and you can enjoy it, and you can pass it down to your kids and enjoy it. And so I will be going for that.
No, that's awesome. And I think like you and I are alluding to, I don't think that means the dumbing down of comics at all. In fact, I think sometimes it's more challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
To write a book that still has a robust story to it, but to tell it in a way that is riveting. What it reminds me of actually is it reminds me of like even old filmmakers, because they didn't have the special effects, so it's like, how do you, they'd have to figure out really creative ways, to maybe get from plot point A to plot point B. And I feel like we kind of have that same awesome kind of unique challenge, to be able to tell fun stories, to not back off, not make them kiddie stories. Because even as a kid, I hated like, oh, you can read Spider-Man Adventures. Like, I don't want to read Spider-Man Adventures. I want to read The Amazing
The
Spider-Man.
Amazing, yeah, absolutely.
I don't
That's
want
the
to read.
one.
I don't want to read this. Even when I was a kid, I was like, I don't want to read this kiddie stuff. I want to read
Right. Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Right. And we were a little bit of, well, I don't know how old you are, but I was a different, the Generation X, I'm the Generation X guy. And Gen Xers we were notorious for being put in front of TVs and allowed to watch like things like Terminator and RoboCop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like I kind of grew up with a little bit more of a sense of that stuff. So I was kind of like, like I watched Conan when I was 8 or 9 or
Oh,
whatever,
absolutely. Oh, man.
and that's pretty hardcore. Like I wouldn't let my kids watch that at 8 or 9 at all. But I think I'm just a little bit more savvy on pop culture stuff than my parents were. But now that I am savvy and I know what's out there, I'm really guarded against that. So my generation, we kind of went from that. Latchkey kids, two parents working,
Yeah.
coming home and watching, whatever TV show was on at the time or
Exactly.
movie was on cable. And then now we've kind of turned into these parents that are like really strict on like what our kids' intake is, and we've got guards on everything. So I think it's because our culture kind of got it. We know like how
Yeah.
big culture can be in your life, how big those stories can affect you.
Yeah.
But we also like had awesome comics that were on that line of the comics code. So
they were
I think
awesome.
I think we had something special. I really did. I'm trying to recreate that somehow.
I think that's why so many of us have a love of comics.
Yeah.
It's like I look at the comics and it's like, you know, they I guess that was called a Bronze Age, 70s, 80s. I mean, it's like that was a golden age of comics.
Oh, definitely.
When you look back on it, you just say like, man, that
They don't make them like that anymore.
they don't make them like that anymore. And I'm just like, look, so like even my middle son, who my middle child, he's my boy, he reads comics now, and he'll go and he'll read some of my old books, and he'll just be like, wow. I'm like, yeah. But it's funny, you were talking about movies. I was watching last Christmas, had to watch, Die Hard. And
Yeah.
it's funny, but it's like I forgot like every movie like in the 80s and 90s showed like breasts, and I
Right.
forgot. I forgot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we were watching
Desensitized.
No, dude, we were watching Predator 2, and I'm like, I forgot all this. I mean, the violence
Yeah.
I remember, but I was just like,
Yeah.
oh man,
Yeah.
there's naked chicks in all these movies. I forgot about that. You know what I mean?
Let me
'Cause
catch
it's
up
like,
with the chat. Let me
yeah.
catch up with the chat real quick. Sorry. My good friend, the honorable and lovely 6 a.m. Comics, he says, my 9-year-old wants to read all the books I've backed over the last years. It's upsetting. I can't let him read hardly any of them. And I know what books he's talking about, and he's right. Like all of these CG books that I've backed, only a few of them can I actually let the kids see.
Yeah.
We've got Yang Yanzao, one of the funnest names I've ever tried to say on chat.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining. Where will young kids find these books? They don't sell comics in grocery stores anymore. That's true. That's a problem. But I do think that we're the age group that's going to give that to them.
I agree.
Like, we're the ones who like the stuff. We're the ones who champion it. We're sort of the ambassadors of it to pass it down to our kids so that they'll love it. So it's up to us to do the research and go out and find it and pay some money for this stuff and get it delivered.
That's my thought. Because even back in the day, I mean, it's like I would go with my mom to, and she had to, consent to buy me the books. So here we are.
Right.
We're all lovers of comics. I mean, it's being able to buy a book and be able to share with my kid. That's awesome.
Yes. Here's Hex Allen. Welcome to the chat, and thank you so much for subbing or making sure that you're subbed. I do appreciate that very much.
What's up, Mel?
And then he says he'll grow up one day. 6 a.m. Comics. I guess he's talking about his kid, But you know what? Let's go ahead and get into what looks to be a very cool, fun indie comic book, and it's called Black Tiger. Hidden Dragon.
That's
First
right.
off, before we get too far into that, why don't you tell me a little bit about your first comic? Well, you've talked to me a lot about your early comics experience. Just tell me the first
Mhm.
comic you bought, or the one that you remember that really affected you.
Well, it was I think it was Avengers 182. That was
Okay.
it was a John Byrne. Uh, it was the art was by John Byrne, and
Okay.
who would later go on to be like my favorite artist, and even storyteller, one of my favorite storytellers of all time.
Awesome.
I knew some of the characters on the cover. It was a giant Crusher Creel. He was holding Miss Marvel like he was King Kong, and like the Vision was attacking him, the Beast was attacking him, Iron Man was attacking him. But the cover was just riveting. And
Yeah.
he's like on this giant barge, and he's huge now. So he's absorbed like the barge, so he's humongous. And I'm looking at this cover, I'm like, this is crazy. It's like this guy's like a metal King Kong holding. So I picked up the book, and I must have read it like 3 times, like in a
Okay.
row. Just you know, and we got home, and my mom, she makes dinner. I'm still reading the book over and over again. And I picked up books before. I picked up some bad. Like I knew the Super Friends, so
Yeah.
I didn't realize the Super Friends were the Justice League. So I never picked up the Justice League, but I picked up like Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman. I picked up
Right.
Spider-Man because there was they'd show old Spider-Man cartoons and the Hulk. I love the Hulk because I was a big fan of Lou Ferrigno and the Hulk, and picking up a comic that says like just like on TV, to have like this thing in
Right.
the corner. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is so awesome,
Yeah. Yeah.
so and actually I think the reason why I picked up that story is I'd been reading the Hulk,
Yeah.
and the Hulk actually battled Crusher Creel, and I'd never heard of Creel before.
Oh
He
yeah.
battled Crusher Creel, and then seeing Creel, I'm like, that's the guy from the Hulk.
Yeah.
And he's here, he's fighting these Avengers. I didn't really know who the Avengers were. I knew who Iron Man was, but the other
Yeah.
guys I didn't. But man, I love that book. And I told my mom at the end of that day, we were at dinner. She had made dinner. We're sitting at the table, and I'm just still have the comic with me. It's open at the dinner table, which is like back in the day, like, no. My mom was just like, no, put away the comic. And I just told her, I proclaimed her, I said, I am now a comic book collector. And she was like, that's good. Finish your string beans. That's good.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. Now finish your string beans.
Okay. Yeah.
But here I am years later, and I still have
Yeah.
that Avengers book, and I ended up getting over time the majority of the volume 1, I guess you would call it, of the Avengers run.
Yeah.
I picked up a lot of the old ones. All my books are well read, so it's like I'd pick them up. They'd be kind of messed up. So I have like all the books, but none of them are worth a whole bunch because they're all, they're all well read. And then I got them and I read them too.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, you need to collect them. I'm like, I gotta open this thing up, man. I gotta read this thing.
Well, let's go through your book and let me ask you a couple of questions. Tell me, who is the creative team on this book?
Absolutely. So myself, I created this story back in first in like 05.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working with Rod Looper.
Yeah.
Found
Rod
him.
Looper.
I found
Awesome.
him through digital webbing,
Oh, that's
which
great.
was like a forum back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Right.
you would post, hey, looking for an artist. And then a whole
Yeah.
bunch of artists would post on there, and they put stuff on there. Actually, one of his buddies was the one that I started working with. And his buddy was like, I think I'm going to go do something else, but I've got a guy who I think
Yeah.
would be awesome. And that's how Rod and I got connected,
Oh,
probably
that's
back in 04, 05. And we've worked together off and on ever since. I mean,
great. Oh, really? Wow.
yeah, he's done. So, I mean, with this campaign, there's about 350 pages worth of Black Tiger art.
Oh, that's great.
And he's the line artist,
Yeah.
on that. So, I mean, he's done a phenomenal job. Rini came on board to make just a stunning cover.
She is something else, man. Her art is just so dynamic. I think it's at the top here. That's the new cover, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that one.
Yeah. Wow.
Great Rini is like she's like a Michelangelo. I mean, because like she's an amazing line artist, but she can do so many different types of art. You know what I mean? It's like, she's like, oh, I'm doing this woodwork. I'm doing this. I'm like, golly, this woman could do like everything like well. So a lot of respect for Rini. I was really glad when she came on board and said, you know what, um, I would love to do a cover for Black Tiger. Um,
Wow.
we got a guy. His name is Charles, but he goes by Artacita One. He's the one that did the colors.
Okay.
So one of the great things about working with somebody like a Rod or with a Rini is you get amazing line work.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then the next thing though is like you have to get amazing colors, or else you're taking away from the line art.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right. That's right. You got to invest, and then you realize after you've invested, you got to invest again in a colorist.
absolutely. But you know what? It's been amazing. So
The colors look great too. Your colorist is killing it for sure.
yes, and
Are
the
the black and white
interior
pages
colors.
waiting to be colored, or are you going to have some black and white pages?
So all the pages right now are going to be colored in the book,
Okay.
and the majority of them are already colored. I wanted to show some black and whites,
Yeah.
but Rod, more and more, he's wanted to release black and white editions for quite a while. So who knows? Maybe we'll do that. We have between all the Black Tiger campaigns, it's the equivalent of about 12 issues
Uh-huh.
and almost 350 pages worth of comic. So maybe we'll do like a black and white type compendium on newspaper kind of a deal.
Wow. That'd be
You know,
cool.
just maybe something like that. But
Yeah. That'd be
you
really
know,
cool.
just I'm just excited with how I've had the opportunity to tell the story and how Rod has come alongside. He's really taken a lot of ownership and
Yeah.
helped really drive the bus. And the great thing about stories is you start to get down the road. Then as a creative team, you really start to hit your stride. And then the characters, they really have a life of their own. So you're writing a story, but you've lived with these characters for so long.
Right.
It's like the characters are almost starting to write themselves, as you
Right.
put them into situations. So it's been an absolute blast.
Well,
And this,
Well, I was just going to say, it looks like the magic is happening, and the one thing I would say, probably the word that I would use to describe the art I'm seeing right now is dynamic, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. Rod has a great way of showing dynamic, very dramatic, powerful images.
yes.
And then you've got the art, you've got the colorist who is helping with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the action looks great, and the drama is great. I think it's a really great work of art that you're producing here.
Man, I appreciate that. And we also have some of Rod's artwork here available, originals.
Okay.
For those that want to pick up, these are pencils. Then we have some pencil and ink pages that he's done. So just for those that potentially want to pick it up before he goes to auction with them. So once he goes to auction, they go for a lot.
All right.
I'm
going to put the link in the chat. Please go and back it if you have not backed it yet. And I'll also put the link in the description when I post this later again, because we'll put this on Breaking Rad's channel also, this interview and this talk.
Nice. Awesome.
So hopefully we'll have some people that will come and check it out and back it. I'm going to go right to the top real fast. Don't get dizzy. Hang on.
I know.
And this is a very long.
Yeah, there's a lot there because
you got a lot of stuff. That's great.
Because there's 3 different graphic novels altogether. If somebody wanted to get all the Black Tiger.
Yeah. Well, look. Full disclosure, we have reached about a half an hour, and my battery on my computer is going to die. So I apologize for the brief closeout, but I think we've covered some really good and interesting subject matter. We got Ken B in here. Thank you for stopping by, Ken. We appreciate you.
What's up, Ken?
Let me sign off. And John, let's do this again sometime, man. Let's talk some more.
Man, you know what? I love to talk comics, and it sounds like you're a guy who loves comics in the same era as I do.
Yeah.
So I would love to come on and just Just
Let's do
chop
a
it up
John.
about
Let's do
comics.
a John Byrne or Fantastic Four retrospective and get some of our old stuff out and show it to the camera one day.
That's a done. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Would
Okay.
love
Oh,
to do that.
we got Zippy the unicorn in here. He is one of the funniest guys on the internet. Thank you, Zippy, for stopping by.
Appreciate it,
And
Zippy.
and we will sign off now. And John, thank you very much again. And everybody, go back Black Tiger, Hidden Dragon right now before it is too late. Thank you all and farewell.